Discover the life-changing truth. Orphan Millionaire claims she can heal your children revealed. Emma stood in the sunlight streaming through her living room window, golden rays bouncing off the laughter-filled walls of her sanctuary. At 35, her journey from the foster system to millionaire status was nothing short of miraculous. The townsfolk of Maplewood buzzed with mixed feelings about the woman who had turned their old library into a thriving community center. Some murmured praises, calling her a saint, while others raised their eyebrows, casting doubts about the motivations of an orphan with newfound wealth. Every day, Emma welcomed children from broken homes into her refuge, a place brimming with hope. The giggles of wide-eyed kids dancing around her filled the air, a beautiful symphony of innocence and dreams. But this idyllic vision wavered when Charlie, a boy with a smile that could light up the darkest days, grew gravely ill. Hushed conversations whispered across Maplewood like a dark shadow, fueling suspicion about Emma. How could someone like her be trusted to save their children? As the news rippled through the community, Emma's heart ached. Memories of sleepless nights filled with the longing for love pressed down on her chest. How well she remembered the empty halls of her childhood, devoid of warmth, with the echoes of rejection stinging her soul. Emma had vowed never to let another child feel that kind of loneliness. She rushed to the hospital, panic rising with each passing moment. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Emma faced the town square that evening, a whirlpool of conflicting emotions. Residents packed the folding chairs, eyes wide and wary. The tension was palpable, thick like fog. Accusations flared. "She's just using those kids for the money," one voice called out. Another chimed in, "How can we trust her with our kids?" Emma stood there, trembling, tears brimming as the voices rose, drowning out the truth she longed to share. Then, in a moment that felt like diving into icy waters, she took a deep breath and stepped forward. "I know you're scared," she said, her voice raw. "Scared of loss. Scared that all I have is a mask. But I promise you, every child in my care is a part of my family. I too have known the hurt of feeling unwanted." The room fell silent, the air heavy with anticipation. Could a past filled with pain and abandonment fuel a brighter future? As she spoke, Emma poured out her soul, tales of darkness colliding with dreams of hope. The walls of mistrust cracked before her open heart. But just as glimmers of understanding sparked in the eyes of some, a sudden crash echoed through the square, sending shockwaves of fear racing through the crowd. With emotions on edge, Maplewood stood at a pivotal moment, clinging to uncertainty. Emma's vulnerability had opened a door, but would they dare to step through? As the atmosphere shifted, one question hung in the air. Could the love she offered and had once yearned for be enough to unite them all? A deafening noise jolted Emma from her thoughts. The crowd erupted into chaos, whispers transforming into gasps and shouts. She turned, her heart racing. A child, tripping over a loose cobblestone, had knocked over a stack of chairs. In the midst of the uproar, she caught sight of Charlie's frightened face, pale and fragile, peering through the mass of anxious bodies. "Charlie," Emma called, her voice sharp with urgency. She rushed toward him as more townsfolk stumbled back, some shielding their children. The air buzzed with confusion, but all that mattered was reaching Charlie. She crouched down to his level, locking eyes with him. "Hey, it's okay. I'm here," she whispered, trying to radiate calm amid the storm. The world could roar around them, but she needed him to know he was safe. The scattering crowd began to regroup, murmurs of concern weaving through anxious faces. From the back, a familiar figure appeared, Dr. Michael, the town's trusted physician. He squeezed through the crowd, moving toward them with practiced authority. "Emma, what happened?" he asked, his brow lined with worry. "Just a little accident," she replied. gesturing to the fallen chairs. Charlie's wide eyes filled with tears, but Emma lowered herself even closer to him, her expression a comforting balm. "Charlie, can you breathe for me? In and out," she demonstrated while the world outside faded. Slowly, he matched her rhythm, his breaths becoming steadier. It was a small victory, but in that moment it felt monumental. The shock began to pass, replaced by a gentle understanding that maybe, just maybe, she could be enough for him. But the crowd still watched, uncertainty etched on their faces. Emma made a pivot, rising to address them again. "I know a lot of you may not believe in me," she said, her heart thudding in her chest. "But I believe in Charlie. I believe in every child that steps through my door. They are not just numbers to me. They are hope. Every single one has the right to feel loved and cared for." The tension in the air shifted, a chink cracking in the armor of doubt surrounding her. Eyebrows began to raise, curiosity blending with skepticism. She could see some nodding. Others exchanged glances, contemplating her sincerity. Then another voice piped up from the back, the town baker, Mrs. Hargrove, who had always been a pillar in the community. "If you truly care, why not give us a chance to see it for ourselves? Let us meet the children. Show us the good you claim to be doing." Emma felt a wave of relief wash over her. This was what she needed, an opening. "Yes, yes, I would love that," she said, her heart swelling with gratitude. The crowd erupted into low conversation, a ripple of renewed energy flowing through them. Emma turned back to Charlie, who was now watching her intently, his small hand trembling as he reached out for hers. She took it in hers, squeezing gently. "We'll face it together," she whispered. But unbeknownst to Emma, the shadows lurking in the background were murkier than the crowd's thoughts. A figure stood near the edge of the square, observing with piercing eyes a new player in the game, one whose intentions might not align with Emma's fragile hopes. As Emma prepared to embrace the wave of change, she wondered if her passion alone could draw the town together, or if darker forces would seek to tear them apart. The next chapter for Maplewood was unfolding, but would love, healing, and trust take root? Or would the shadows lurking at the edges pull them into darkness once again? Emma stood up, feeling the tremors of anxiety still prickling beneath her skin. Charlie was calm now, his breath slowing, but the townsfolk were still buzzing with uncertainty. The air felt heavy, charged with anticipation, and she could sense the shift in their attitudes. It was a small win, yet it was enough to push her forward. "All right, everyone," she called out, her voice echoing through the square. "Let us set a date. I'll invite you all to the center so you can meet the children. You'll see for yourselves what happens in that old building." A murmur started to roll through the crowd, voices blending. Unsure nods turned into tentative smiles as some began to step closer. The town had been in need of hope, and perhaps they felt it flickering to life just a bit. "Charlie, you ready?" she asked, glancing back down at him. He nodded, though his expression remained hesitant. They locked eyes, and for a moment it was just the two of them against the world. Emma whispered, "You're brave, you know? We'll show them how strong you are." As she turned back toward the crowd, she saw Dr. Michael standing off to the side, his brow still furrowed but his stance relaxing. She hoped that he too felt the potential in the air. Then, the tension broke as Mrs. Hargrove stepped forward again, her voice ringing out, "Let us make this happen, folks. When have you ever seen our children shining? It's time to start believing." Cheers erupted, mixed with laughter. Charlie's expression shifted from worry to wonder as he processed the sudden enthusiasm. Emma smiled, feeling her heart race with excitement. Perhaps they were on the brink of something beautiful after all. But even as they began to reshape their narrative, Emma couldn't shake the feeling of eyes still watching from the shadows. A chill swept through her as she spotted the figure lingering at the edge of the square again, shoulders rigid, a silhouette merging with the darkening sky. "Does anyone know who that is?" she asked, her smile faltering slightly as she pointed toward the lurking shadow. Conversations faded as every head turned. The mystery had surfaced again, drawing their focus like a moth to a flame. "That S. Benjamin," A voice piped up from the crowd. "Yes, new in town." Emma felt a knot in her stomach twist tighter. New arrivals always brought questions. But the look in the man's eyes sent another chill through her. What did he want? Was he here to undermine everything she was trying to achieve? Dr. Michael approached her, his brow tight with concern. "Emma, I think it's time you find out what Benjamin is really up to," he said quietly, almost as if he feared being overheard. Suddenly, a sense of foreboding loomed over her excitement. Would the warmth of connection she felt from the crowd be extinguished by whatever dark intentions Benjamin might hold? As the town cheered, confidence growing, Emma felt her heart sink into uncertainty. She needed to confront Benjamin, but how would she do it without ruining the fragile thread of hope they had begun to weave? Will love be enough to shield them, she thought desperately. The crowd buzzed and glittered around her. But were they ready for the truth just beneath the surface? The next chapter loomed ahead, filled with both opportunity and danger. Would Emma uncover Benjamin's intentions before it was too late? Emma's pulse raced as she scanned the crowd. The excitement that had filled the square moments earlier now felt tainted by uncertainty. Benjamin, the newcomer, stood there motionless, wrapped in shadows like a cloak. There was something unsettling about him. She couldn't shake the feeling that her burgeoning success could all come crashing down if she didn't act. "Stay here with Charlie," she instructed Dr. Michael, who was still watching Benjamin with concern. "I'll be right back." She pushed past the cheering townsfolk, their faces glowing with newfound hope while she felt only the weight of dread pulling her down. Each step toward Benjamin felt like wading through thick fog, the cheers fading behind her until they were barely audible. "Benjamin," she called out, her voice trembling just a little with determination. The crowd parted, curiosity replacing cheer as they watched her approach the shadowy figure. He turned slowly, his expression inscrutable. "Emma." His voice was deep, almost soothing, but it did little to calm her nerves. "Why are you here?" she asked, trying to sound strong even though she felt anything but. "This town is fragile and we don't need disruptions." He stepped closer, the dim light revealing sharp features and eyes that seemed to harbor a storm. "I'm not here to disrupt. I'm here to help." She raised an eyebrow, skeptical. "Help? By lurking in the shadows? What do you really want?" "People are scared of what they don't understand, Emma," Benjamin replied, his tone shifting, becoming almost more earnest. "I see the changes you're trying to make, but I also see a flaw, a potential disaster waiting to unfold." Emotion bubbled at the surface as Emma's heart raced, a mix of excitement and dread intertwined. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice dropping slightly, the buzz of the crowd fading as they watched the exchange unfold. "You're reaching for something beautiful, but not everyone will support it. Some will try to tear it down," he explained, his eyes boring into her as if trying to read her very soul. "I know this town. I have connections. I can help protect what you're building." Emma bit her lip, considering his words. "And what's in it for you?" "Nothing you couldn't already give your children," he replied, highly confident. "I can bring resources, information, and strength. But first you need to be willing to trust." The town was watching, and she felt the weight of their eyes. Charlie's small face hovered in her mind. She couldn't let anyone harm him or the dreams that sparkled within those hopeful hearts. "But how do I know you're telling the truth?" She paused, searching his face for a sign, something that might tell her he was sincere. Benjamin hesitated, glancing back at the crowd before looking deep into her eyes. "Trust doesn't come easily, but sometimes a chance must be taken before the storm arrives." The tension stood thick between them, and Emma felt the pulse of the town rage behind her. Could she risk accepting this man and potentially open the door to danger? Or could he be the ally she desperately needed? As she weighed her choices, laughter echoed from the square, a stark contrast to the heaviness hanging in the air. "Time's running out," Benjamin murmured, leaning in slightly, his voice a whisper. "Make your decision before the storm breaks. Do you believe in the strength of your people?" With every heartbeat, she felt the enormity of the moment. Could she gamble everything on an unknown? Emma's mind raced with possibilities. But could she truly risk the happiness of her community on a man she barely knew? The questions lingered, echoing in her mind. Would she take the leap into uncertainty? Or would hesitation pull her back into the shadows where all her hopes could die? The sun dipped lower, casting an orange glow across the square. In that moment, everything changed. Emma realized the next steps she took could either pave the way for a beautiful future or plunge them into disarray. But what would she choose? Time was slipping away. The square was alive with clapping and cheers from behind her. Yet Emma felt a chilling solitude as she stared at Benjamin. Despite the bombardment of noise and excitement, her mind was trapped in a whirlwind of doubt. Emma? His deep voice punctured the throbbing silence between them, drawing her attention back to his piercing gaze. I know you're afraid, but every big change comes with fear. Think about it. This town needs something more than hope. It needs protection, and that's what I can offer. Behind Benjamin, the sun dipped further, the orange glow now splintered by thin clouds, casting a shadow over his face. Emma's heart raced, her instincts warring against one another. The promise of security he dangled was tempting, but the unknown lurked like an unseen predator ready to pounce. What kind of protection? She asked, her voice steadying, though inside, her fears churned like a storm. And what does that involve? He took a step closer, lowering his voice. I have connections, resources that can fortify your efforts. Knowledge of those who would seek to undermine your success. We can create a plan together. Her uncertainty gnawed at her. But what if your plan backfires? I can't let you drag my community into something they can't control. I wouldn't want to do that, he replied, his tone earnest. I promise my only goal is to keep what you're building safe. What you stand for. His eyes softened, reflecting something deeper, something almost vulnerable. I believe in it, Emma. You're changing lives here. But change attracts attention, both good and bad. You want to protect your children, don't you? The mention of Charlie sent a jolt through her. Yes, she wanted to protect him more than anything. The thought of threats against him made her stomach twist. But how do I know you won't become a threat yourself? Trust takes time, he said. But I'm willing to earn it. You have to take a leap, Emma. You've done it before. Remember your first rally? You stood up despite everyone doubting you. This is just another chance to be brave. Her heart swelled as she thought back to that day, the way her people had rallied behind her, their unified vision lighting a path forward. But could she afford to trust again? We could be great together, he insisted, hope in his voice. You lead this town. I can help you shield it. Suddenly, a shout broke through the crowd. A little girl stood on her father's shoulders, waving a handmade banner that read, "We believe in Emma." The sight warmed Emma's spirit even amidst the storm brewing in her heart. They believed in her. Perhaps she had to believe too. As the girl's laughter echoed, Emma felt the weight of the decision pressing heavily on her chest. She thought of Charlie, of the dreams she built with every intention to shield him from the shadows. And now here they were, standing on the cusp of forming an alliance with a man who seemed both savior and risk. Will you give me time? Benjamin asked, his eyes steady and deep. I promise you won't regret it. Emma stood frozen in her thoughts, the waving banner and the laughter of children swirling around her like a whirlwind. Did she dare trust him? Did she dare trust herself? Okay, I'll consider it, Emma finally said, her voice nearly swallowed by the rising din around them. But I need and deserve full transparency. Benjamin nodded, a small smile breaking across his shadowed features. I'll show you everything. Before she could ask more, a thunderous crash resounded through the square, knocking her senses back to the present. The crowd gasped, eyes widening in fear. Emma turned to see plumes of smoke rising in the distance. A fire was starting on the edge of town. Now, it seems, the storm has indeed arrived, Benjamin said, tension cracking like a whip in his words. As the cries of the townsfolk erupted, Emma felt her heart drop. What had she ushered in? It was too late to turn back. Could they hold the town together now, with chaos lurking just beyond their walls? The moment of truth was upon them. The crowd's realization of the fire sent a ripple of panic through the square. Emma felt her pulse quicken, the weight of adrenaline pressing against her chest. She instinctively searched the faces in the crowd, looking for Charlie. Where was he? She had to find him to know he was safe. Stay close. Benjamin's voice rose above the chaos, cutting through the noise like a beacon. He reached for her hand, a firm grip reassuring her if only for a moment. Her heart raced not just from fear, but also from an unexpected spark of hope. Together they could do something, couldn't they? With her heart pounding, Emma turned to the crowd. Everyone, listen. We need to evacuate the area. Head towards the community center. Is south the safest place? Her voice, strong and clear, silenced the murmurs of confusion. As people began to move, she caught a glimpse of Charlie, frantically searching for her among the throngs. Relief flooded over her. Mom! He shouted, darting towards her with tears glistening in his eyes. She knelt down, pulling him into a tight embrace. I'm here, buddy. You're safe, I promise, she whispered, pressing her cheek against his soft hair. They held on to each other tightly, the familiar warmth of his small body grounding her amidst the chaos. But the urgency of the moment was still at the forefront of her mind. We have to go, Charlie, she said, releasing him reluctantly, brushing his tears away with her thumb. She turned back to Benjamin, who was now directing others to form a line, leading people away from the chaos. You're doing great, he called out, a sense of command evident in his demeanor. Emma marveled for just a moment. Was this the man she could trust? In his leadership, she caught a glimpse of that promise he had spoken of. Are you with me? She yelled over the growing roar of sirens and the crackling of flames. She met his eyes, searching for confirmation that they could face this together. Always, he replied, his jaw set with determination. They moved together, guiding children and parents through the throngs filled with fear. The small community center loomed ahead, lights flickering on in anticipation of the influx. Emma looked sideways at Benjamin, taking in the way he worked. Confident, focused, offering everyone a calm presence that felt contagious. As they approached the building, a few shouts echoed behind them. Emma turned to see a team of firefighters rushing past, their faces serious and resolute. A knot of anxiety twisted in her stomach, but there was no time to dwell on that now. Once in the safety of the community center, Emma began helping families settle down. Her hands moved quickly, setting out blankets and cups of water, feeding into that rush of adrenaline. Yet as the minutes passed, she could feel the weight of the world pressing down harder on her shoulders. Mom, Charlie said softly, looking up at her with wide eyes. Is everything going to be okay? She crouched down again, cupping his face in her hands. Yes, sweetheart. We're going to get through this together. She tried to project strength she wasn't entirely sure of. She needed to be the rock for him, just as much as he was her light in all of this. Look, Charlie pointed towards the windows. What's happening out there? Emma turned to see bright flashes of light illuminating the darkening sky. Fire trucks had surrounded the flames, and firefighters were busily battling the inferno that threatened their town. Anxiety clawed at her heart. What if they couldn't contain it? What would happen to them? Benjamin stood nearby, assessing the scene. They're working hard, he said, his voice low but steady. Let us trust them. Trust. The word echoed in her mind. It wasn't just about trusting Benjamin. It encompassed everything: the community, the firefighters, and most importantly, herself. But her thoughts were interrupted by a sudden loud explosion. The windows rattled, and the crowd gasped. Emma's heart raced again, this time with a heavy feeling of dread. What was that? Someone shouted from the back, fear creeping back into the atmosphere. Something. SNT right, Benjamin said, his voice low. Emma knew then that the storm raging outside was far more than they had bargained for, and the promises of protection were quickly being tested. She glanced at Charlie, their eyes locking in a moment that seemed to stretch on forever. No matter what happens, we stick together, she said firmly. But as uncertainty lurked just outside those doors, could they truly survive what was to come? The moment of truth was hanging on a thread. The building filled with worried families, whispers seeping into the air like smoke. Emma tried to keep it together. With the deafening sounds of the fire raging outside, each beat of her heart seemed to pulse with the fear running rampant in the room. She could feel an impending sense of danger that crackled like the flames outside. Charlie's small hand gripped hers tightly, his fingers trembling. "Mom, why are we still here?" he asked, glancing nervously at the door. Emma could hardly find the voice to respond. Her mind was whirling, thoughts colliding and crashing like waves against a rocky shore. "They're going to make sure everyone is safe," she finally replied. But even she felt the uncertainty in her own words. Benjamin was pacing slightly, keeping an eye on the entrance. "The firefighters have their hands full," he muttered to himself, as though trying to convince himself more than anyone else. Emma could see the tension in his shoulders. The calm authority he had projected earlier seemed shaken. "Let us make sure everyone has what they need," she suggested, determined to refocus her energy. She reached for a stack of blankets as she glanced around at the worried faces. "Can someone help me with the water?" A few parents nodded, gathering themselves and moving closer to assist her, but the exhaustion etched in their faces was undeniable. Around them, people murmured snippets of fear, murmurs that bounced off the walls like an echo of despair. Suddenly, the door creaked open, and everyone turned, hearts racing, hope flashing in their eyes. But it was only a worried fire chief, mud-splattered and grim. "Listen up, everybody," he called, his voice steady despite the urgency in his eyes. "We're going to need to keep everyone inside for now. The fire is spreading quicker than we anticipated." A collective gasp went through the crowd. Emma felt the hairs on her neck stand on end. The fear in Charlie's eyes reflected her own. She hadn't prepared for this. How could she reassure him now? The thought of being trapped, of the flames creeping closer, gripped her heart. "But what about our homes?" A voice from the back shouted, tinged with panic. "What if we lose everything?" Emma spotted a mother, cradling a toddler, tears streaming down her face. She felt an urge to reach out, to connect. "We'll make it through this," she found herself saying, her own voice almost shaky but firm. "We have each other right here. We are all a community, and together we can face anything." "Do you really believe that?" someone whispered close by, a soft voice that cut through the noise. Emma caught Benjamin's gaze. The urgency wrapped around them both like a vice. "Yes," she said, "I have to believe it." But doubts lingered in the air like shadows. From outside, more explosions echoed, rattling the building again. The windows vibrated, sending ripples of frightened gasps through the crowd. "Everyone, stay calm." Benjamin's voice sliced through the tension. "Remember what we talked about. Help each other, stay together. We can't afford to lose hope now." As he spoke, a father seated in one of the chairs stood up. "What if we should defend ourselves?" What if the words died in his throat as he met Emma's eyes, realizing the importance of composure in this moment? "I understand this is terrifying," Emma said, "but acting out of fear won't help any of us." Her words settled like a blanket on the anxious crowd, but they all knew the truth. They could only huddle together and wait, pray, hope. But what if support from one another wasn't enough anymore? A deafening roar engulfed the building, drowning out everything. The fire had breached the periphery. "Get to the back," someone yelled, panic explicitly clear, and the crowd shifted towards the far end of the room. Emma's heart raced. She grabbed Charlie, pulling him closer. "Stay by me, okay?" But as she pressed against the throng moving backwards, she felt an emptiness on her other side. "Benjamin," she called out, spotting him still at the front. He stood between them and the door, eyes scanning the room. In that moment, something shifted in Emma. A desperate need to keep her family safe resonated deeply. "We can't lose anyone now." Just then, without warning, the lights flicked off. Darkness enveloped them, and a new wave of panic swept through the fiery chaos. Just outside was now inside. And as shadows danced on the walls, Emma had to decide: stay and fight or risk it all in an attempt to escape the chaos. The real battle was just beginning. Flashlights flicked on, beams trembling in the dark, illuminating worried faces twisted in dread. With each flickering shadow, the pulsating chaos outside pressed in on them, the heat brushing against the walls like an ominous warning. Emma's heart thundered in her chest as she searched for Charlie. "Stay close, buddy," she whispered, keeping him firmly by her side. Just then, a mother nearby began to sob quietly, her breath hitching. "What do we do?" Charlie's voice trembled, slicing through the thick air of fear. Emma crouched down to look him in the eyes. "We wait for Benjamin. He'll know what to do," she assured him, her voice firm even when uncertainty tugged at her insides. But Benjamin was still at the front, frozen by indecision. As the frantic murmurs transformed into desperate shouts, Emma felt a weight settle onto her shoulders. Somehow, she had to be the anchor, the one to guide them through the storm. "Everyone," she called out, her voice steady, "we have to stick together. If we move as one, we'll be safer." Slowly, people began to turn their eyes towards her, an unexpected source of calm amid chaos. It was as if her determination gave them a flicker of hope, a tiny light piercing through the overwhelming darkness. "What if the flames come in here?" a father's voice echoed, panic rising in the pitch. The sound of shouting intensified, like waves crashing against the shore, crushing, overwhelming. Emma closed her eyes for a brief moment, fighting to keep her own fear at bay. "I don't know," she replied honestly, "but if we stick together and have faith, we can make it through." The wall suddenly shuddered violently, and the nursery wall behind them cracked, a line of darkness creeping in. Emma gasped, pulling Charlie close as the room screamed in chaos. People pushed and shoved, communication lost amidst the panic. Benjamin's voice finally cut through all the noise. "Everyone, to the back. Follow Emma." He moved toward them, urgency in his steps, adrenaline heating his every word. Like a wave surging towards the shore, people began to follow her, drawn by her strength. Emma could feel Charlie's little body trembling against her leg. "It's going to be okay," she murmured, even as her own heart fluttered with dread. But Charlie looked up at her, trusting her with wide, hopeful eyes. For him, she had to believe. They gathered in a corner, surrounded by a cluster of families, all forming a protective bubble amidst the incoming storm. Emma's pulse quickened as she caught a whiff of smoke. The flame scent was sickly sweet, curling and curling over their heads. Then, in the middle of the chaos, she felt a small hand squeeze hers, a mother with a terrified toddler who clung to her arm like she was a lifeline. Emma met the woman's gaze and offered a small smile, a flicker of empathy connecting them. "Together," Emma whispered, and the crowd echoed her sentiment, grasping for hope in the dark. Suddenly, the sound of splintering would echoed from the front of the building, drawing gasps from everyone around them. "Help!" a voice screamed from outside. "We need to get in." The crowd froze, uncertainty creeping in once again. Emma looked at Benjamin, the question hanging in the charged air. Should they open the door to those outside? Do we let them in? Benjamin's eyes flickered with doubt. "We can't leave them out there," Emma breathed, but fear gripped her heart tightly. What if they bring the fire with them? But just then, Charlie's small voice piped up, "Mom, we can help them, right?" The words hung in the air, transforming it with reality. Could they risk it all to save others, or was that just the kind of courage the moment demanded? Just as the first crack of dawn hinted at hope outside, Emma had to make a decision. Would they stay safe in their corner, or would they act? As she glanced at the gathering of faces around her, Emma felt the weight of their collective hearts resting heavily on her. Had her moment of conviction come too late, or was this their chance to overcome the flames? As the door rattled violently, a new urgency filled the room. Would her decision make the difference between life and death? The moment to act had arrived. Emma's breath hitched as she glanced at the door. The rattling was maddening, echoing the panic in her heart. "We need to decide now," she shouted, desperate to cut through the chaos. Benjamin stood at her side, his brow furrowed. He turned to the crowd, eyes full of urgency. "What do we do? If we open up, we might let the fire." In his voice was strained, laced with the weight of leadership. A woman from the back yelled, "But we can't just leave them out there. Imagine if it's a family." "Exactly," Emma agreed, feeling the swell of solidarity push her forward. "And if we don't let them in, they could die out there. They may not have much time left." Her voice trembled, infused with raw emotion. "But it could put us all at risk." Another voice protested. A deep silence filled the room, each person wrestling with the weight of her words. Charlie tugged on Emma's shirt. "Mom, it's the right thing to do." His innocent insistence pierced right through her conflicted heart. Emma met his gaze, and in those bright eyes, she saw not just fear, but a flicker of courage. If her child could believe in hope, how could she do any less? "Okay, we're opening the door," she said, steeling herself. "But we'll do it carefully." Benjamin nodded, his expression hardening with resolve. He rushed to the door, motioning for others to gather around. "Everyone, we create a chain. If they come in, we form a barrier. Keep together." Clutching Charlie's hand, she joined the fray. As they positioned themselves around the door, Emma could hear frantic shouting from the outside, the desperate cries morphing into pleading. "We can't be afraid," she reminded herself, pushing down her own pounding heart. Benjamin counted to 3, and together they heaved the door open. A wave of heat surged in, carrying the pungent smell of smoke. The scene outside was chaos, flames licking the edges of nearby buildings, shadows darting, people scrambling. Emma could barely make out silhouettes as terrified faces huddled together, gasping for breath. "Help us," a man shouted, collapsing before them. "Please, we just need a place to hide." Moving instinctively, Emma stepped forward. "Come in." Before she could pull back, hands grasped her arms, pulling her towards the doorway. The first silhouetted figures stumbled through, desperate and coated in soot. "Quickly," Benjamin urged, casting glances back toward the flames. They all flooded into the room, instinctively covering each other. It felt like a push against the inevitable tide of tragedy. Emma felt a spark of pride as they closed the door, but it was interrupted by a visceral wave of terror. The room seemed tighter, the air heavier, now filled with the palpable dread and despair of new arrivals. "Is everyone here?" Benjamin asked, counting heads. Emma's heart sank as she realized they had lost count of those left outside. "Not everyone," one of the newcomers whispered, looking back towards the door, their face full of anguish. Amidst the assembled crowd, fear began to rise again, feelings intertwining with the shadows that flickered across the walls. Emma reached for Charlie, holding him close, but the horror of the unknown loomed larger. "What about them?" someone cried out, pointing back at the door now shut tight. "What happens if they don't make it? We might have put them in more danger. What if?" The questions hung in the air, unresolved. Doubt began to etch itself into the fabric of their little sanctuary as the flames raged in the distance. Emma's heart raced. Could they have brought the fire inside by opening the door? Or had they truly embarked on the path of compassion? As the crowd braced for a second wave of uncertainty, Emma knew they needed a plan quickly. Her own survival instincts clashed against her moral compass. "Maybe it wasn't just about them," she whispered to herself. "It's about us, about survival, about hope." The realization crashed into her, illuminating the strife lurking just beyond their protective walls. Would bravery be their salvation, or would it only lead to more devastation? As the sound of pounding feet echoed once more, from outside, Emma had to confront a chilling truth. The worst was yet to come. Emma's heart raced as the sound of frantic footsteps grew louder outside. The room held its breath, the air thick with anxiety and uncertainty. The newcomers, still trembling from the chaos outside, looked up with pleading eyes. She felt Charlie cling tighter to her side, his small frame a comforting anchor in a storm of fear. "Everyone listen," she exclaimed, her voice echoing against the walls. "We've made a choice to let people in that brave. But now we need to stand together, not just as a group but as a family." Her words resonated, but she noticed the wavering flicker of doubt in their gazes. Could they truly weather this storm, or were they inviting danger by opening their doors? Emma's mind swirled with the weight of leadership that had fallen onto her shoulders. But somewhere deep inside, a warmth ignited a belief in the strength of community. Together we can create a barrier, Benjamin said, stepping forward. Let us push furniture against the doors. We need to fortify ourselves. He rallied people to move, his authority pulling them from their stupor. Emma joined in, arranging chairs and tables with the help of those around her. Keep calm, and stay together, Benjamin urged, his voice carrying a sense of urgency mingled with reassurance. As they worked, she could see unity blossoming, shoulders stiffening with determination. With a final shove, they wedged the last table against the door, now a makeshift fortress against the dangers lurking outside. We must trust each other, Emma said, catching Benjamin's eye. Trust that we did the right thing letting them in. Compassion can lead us out of darkness. As her words sank in, the atmosphere shifted slightly. People began to nod, seeking strength from one another. Emma felt a swell of pride as she watched Charlie's expression shift from fear to a hint of confidence. Her heart tightened. We can do this, buddy. We can face anything together, she whispered to him. But just then, a loud crash outside sent a tremor through the walls. Panic surged. Were they ready for whatever lay beyond? Emma gripped the back of a nearby chair, finding her resolve again. Everyone, we need to stay low and keep the little ones safe. As she spoke, another explosion sounded. The tremors resonated and dark smoke crept toward the windows. The fear skyrocketed. Faces tightened with dread. But Emma stood firm. Yes, there's chaos outside, but we are not defeated. Look around. We're already stronger together. More voices chimed in with encouragement, emboldened by her conviction. We are family, someone shouted, igniting the spark she desperately needed. The sentiment echoed through the room, and suddenly, the atmosphere shifted from dread to a shared sense of purpose. We'll stay together until it's safe to go out, Benjamin added, reaffirming their collective strength. If we face this as one, not only will we survive, but we will thrive. With unity renewed, they began talking strategy, monitoring the windows, ensuring everyone stayed calm, comforting the little ones. It was a moment of solidarity, of reclaiming power in the face of fear. Then, as if the world outside was listening, the flames crackled even closer. Emma moved to the window, her heartbeat thundering in her ears like an unyielding drum. She peered outside, and there they were. The encroaching shadows lay heavy, but the fire department was still fighting. Look, she said, her voice steady, they're still out there, giving it everything they've got. They're fighting for us just like we need to fight for each other. The courage that came from her words bolstered everyone's spirits, and they leaned closer, finding strength in that belief that they were all in this together. It was a collective battle, one fueled by hope and love, not fear. In that charged moment, everything crystallized. Emma realized that compassion wasn't merely about letting people in. It was about forging a resilient community, built on empathy and trust, where no one was left behind. Just as they prepared to face the uncertainty together, a shout broke through the building's tense silence. We need to get moving. The fire is shifting. A frantic voice rang out, echoing terror. Without a second thought, Emma locked eyes with Benjamin. We must stick together. If we have to move, we do it now as one. Turning back to the group, she signaled for everyone to join hands, to form a chain of support. Let us stay anchored, and together, we will walk through the flames. Only united can we navigate this. Heartstrings tightened, and as the echoes of unity surged within their formed circle, they stepped toward the door, led by Emma's unwavering confidence. Every step forward felt like a dance with destiny. They dared to not just survive, but to thrive in the face of chaos. As they approached the door, Emma could hear the sounds of first responders outside, the crackle of hoses combating the flames, and the shouts of families, both inside and out. This was the moment she had fought for, a moment to rise together, to become stronger than even the worst odds. The energy surged, and Emma felt the tide of hope wash over them. They were ready now, ready to embrace their fears, to acknowledge the darkness, and yet cling to the light of love and community. Remember, we are family. she shouted, the warmth gathering strength in her chest. She swung the door wide open, facing the shadows, ready to step into the unknown, as one trembling heart because nothing could extinguish the fire they ignited together. In that powerful moment, as flames flickered and shadows danced, love prevailed over fear. Together, hand in hand, they stepped into the storm, as a united force ready to fight for one another and for their town, come what may. This was the moment of truth, and they were ready to see it through. If you felt the power in this story, don't wait any longer. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that will inspire and uplift you. Hit that like button now to feed the algorithm and keep the positivity flowing. Share this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness this transformation. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions. Let us keep building this community together.